Louisa Vinton is the United Nations Development Programme Resident Representative here in Turkey. She joins us now from the Turkish capital, Ankara. Louisa, appreciate you speaking to us here on TRT World. Just talk us through some of the projects that your organisation is working on to help quake victims, especially to return to normal life, because it's only been a few weeks since those earthquakes, but it's a very long time for people who have been left, some of them without anything at all.
Yeah, I should preface this by saying that whatever we can do really pales in comparison to the need. So really the need is vast and the resources are scarce. And this is why we've issued an appeal today for 31 projects aimed at recovery and reconstruction with a total value of $550 million. So what we're trying to do while we mobilize funding for bigger efforts is to use the resources we have available. Right now, we're working with about $10 million. So we're very grateful for the donors that have provided those funds, working on pilots that are really aimed, as what you said, aimed at getting people back to normal, back to life, back to work, back to normal social life, back to community living. So just to give you an idea, we've started where we've always been working, which is in waste management and in protecting public health from some of the threats that have emerged with the collapse of so many buildings and with the scale of the destruction. So providing waste bins, providing disinfectants, providing sanitary chemicals. For example, in Kilis municipality, which escaped the worst impact of the disaster, but has experienced a 40% increase in population from people seeking shelter there, and thus is seeing a big increase in the amount of solid waste, the amount of water usage. We're providing a supply of 110 waste bins and a small garbage truck and some sanitary supplies to get things moving there. We're doing the same with some of the container cities being set up in Hatay, providing wastewater treatment systems, drinking water systems, everything to do with waste management. So that's one big area of support. The second one is, I'm sure you're familiar with the motto of the Sustainable Development Goals, which is to leave no one behind. And here we're very concerned about the fate of the elderly people, persons with disabilities, people who aren't able to fend for themselves in such a strikingly stark situation, to set up mobile services and pop-up centers where services can be provided directly to these people wherever they happen to be, whether it's in tents or in containers or in housing that's in a destroyed neighborhood. We're also very concerned that people not stop working and that the region not become one of dependency. So we're working with women's cooperatives in Hatay so that they can harvest some of the local produce, translate that into hot meals, and provide it to those members of the community who aren't able to access food supplies at the moment. And we're also working on some urgent cultural heritage preservation. We see this as key to the local identity. We know this is a region of unique heritage and history for the world. So it's not even talking about restoration yet, but simply protecting some of the monuments of cultural heritage that have been damaged for the future. And finally, we are working outside of the region. We see that many people have left the region seeking shelter elsewhere. We're working on helping small companies and people without jobs find ways to make a living so that they can support their families until it's time to return to the community. But as I said, the needs are so huge that with what we have, we can only really start small programs. So we're appealing to our international donors to be generous, to show the kind of generosity that is required by a situation of such dire destruction, and to help us fund further programs.
And Louisa, I mean, what is the estimated length of recovery for some of these areas? Because what you've just outlined is huge. I mean, you are literally building from scratch in many of these areas.
Yeah, I think we're talking about decades for real recovery. And I think one of the things we need to remember is not to forget about this region, that this is a big region. It suffered really huge damage. But when we look at the overall Turkish economy, which tends to be very resilient and to keep on growing, really no matter what conditions are thrown at it, that in terms of national GDP, we won't see much of an impact, maybe a decline of 0.5 percentage point from what was forecast, or a percentage point. But really the country as a whole will bounce back quickly in average and national terms. but the South, the Southeast will need focused investment for a long time to come. And we know the government has pledged to reconstruct. We see there's a huge task ahead. We see 301,000 buildings either having collapsed or being in need of demolition, and almost 900,000 individual units, whether it's apartments or buildings, that were destroyed. So it's really a huge reconstruction task. And we see the government pledging to rebuild. Our point of view from United Nations Development Program is that life is a lot more than a house, so that people will need jobs, they will need social services, public services, they will need community life before they will be willing to return to the region or before the region can return to normal. So really it needs consistent investment over a period of years, if not decades.
And yes, hoping that the international community will help and will not forget this region that needs this aid so much. Louisa Vinton, thanks so much for speaking to us live there from Ankara in Turkey.